before you start listening, please make sure to subscribe to this podcast. This episode contains language and content of an explicit nature. Listener discretion is advised. Before a song is released, a record is produced, or a chorus is written, the musicians that write them think a lot. They live a lot, and they feel a lot. Before the chorus dives into the stories and experiences that shape these artists, and ultimately, the music we hear. I'm your host, Sophia Lopercaro, and this episode's guest is Mon Rovîa.
How can you help people if you're not aware of other people's circumstances? If you're not, you can't be too focused on your own at the same time, though. Like, you do have to be grounded, but you can also still help people. I do believe this, if you're not the fully made project yet.
Happy New Year, and welcome back to the podcast with me, your host, Sophia Lopercaro. If you are a normal listener, things are about to be just a teeny tiny little bit different. I normally talk about, what I've been up to for the past week during this intro, but in the spirit of just getting straight to the interview, which is the thing that I'm most excited to get to do with this podcast, we're going to be keeping the intros a lot shorter from now on. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the artist, and then we're going to jump right in. And if you do want to hear what I've been up to and get recs for new artists, cool events happening, especially if you're in the LA area, then you're just going to have to go and listen to the monthly recap episodes, which are going to officially be back at the end of this month. And if all of that sounds good to you, please make sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. And if you are a mobile Spotify listener, leave a comment below. I want to hear from you, hear your thoughts, and also they just help me to make these interviews bigger and better each and every time. Last but not least, because this is the first episode that we are doing a live listening party for on the day of release, an extra special hello to everybody who is listening during said listening party. I am so happy that you are here. Now, with all that said, let's just get straight into talking about Mon Rovîa. I, like many people, discovered him on Instagram. The guy has just been really great about sharing his story, sharing his Afro-Appalachian folk music in a way that is really endearing. He has such a tender heart on his sleeve quality to him, both as a person and as an artist, that really shines through there, and more importantly, shines through in the music itself. And so when I was invited by his label a couple of months ago to see him perform at the Troubadour here in Los Angeles, I immediately jumped on the opportunity, and it was just the most soothing show. I specifically remember I was feeling really dizzy and out of whack that day, and I just got to go to the upper balcony, sit down, and just kind of let the music wrap around me in a big warm hug. And so then when his EP part for Atonement, obviously based on the name part of a 4-part series, was announced, I immediately emailed the label and I was like, I have to have him on the podcast. Please let me do this. And fortunately, he was game. And now here we are with the first episode of 2025. Like I said before, he has such a heart on his sleeve quality to him that completely shines through in this conversation. He was so generous with the things that he was willing to share. So this is truly, I couldn't ask for a better interview to start off this year with. So without further ado, this is my interview with Mon Rovîa. As I was doing some reading about this EP, and it being the final of 4 parts, I know that you sort of refer to this 4-part saga as a hero's journey of sorts. And so I guess just for the sake of starting at the top, if we're talking about this almost as if where we find the hero of the story, I guess at the beginning of this EP, what is, I guess, the headspace of again, the quote unquote hero at this top part?
Great question. Yeah, lovely. So the beginning, I think of the state where I was at. I was wandering, so that's why I called it that. And we titled it, Eric and I, and because this place I felt a lot of loss and lost at the same time. I'm not sure what really was coming, what was going to be ahead for me. Battling where I fit in the scheme of, let's just say, for example, folk music, or even where I was after COVID and all those things. Like, what was my play? What am I supposed to be doing with music? And what got me to this place where I had no idea the path I was to walk. So the wandering is the beginning where you find me just trying to, you know, ask questions and look for answers to where my journey could begin, and things like that. So that's why it's called the wandering.
Okay, so that kind of answers the question of like where we are at the start of the four parts, but where are we at the start specifically of Act 4?
Yeah. Act four, the hero, I think has now, we see him come from the wander, we see him go through trials, which is, the middle period of the life that I lived, where I was just in a lot of different vices and a lot of different choices that led me to darker paths and wrestling with myself. From there, we go to three, which is the dying of self, which for me was the battle of the ego, which is like one of the most important deaths the hero needs to go on, where they realize that they are important to the scheme of things, but not the most important part of
Mm-hmm.
everything. Um, and the need for others in that. And from there, Act Four really is just the culmination of all these things where he comes back. I call it the Sinai moment. It's almost like you come back from the mountain and you've been given all these things. You've passed through the fire of these different experiences, and now you're able to atone for everything that you had done before. You get to go back to the people and bring everything you've learned, not as someone that knows it all, but as someone that is willing to be vulnerable enough to share their failures, their mistakes, their learnings with a humbleness. And that's what atonement is. It's like the door is not open where this hero can return, hopefully help others through their own journey now, because he's been through these different chapters of his life. Mending the fractures within himself. So the chapter really embodies themes of like forgiveness, accountability, and like the courage to confront one's mistakes. So it's really a testament to the hero's growth. I think that's the
Yeah.
main thing when it comes to atonement.
Yeah. I think only because I went to see them perform last night, it kind of makes me think of something like Helplessness Blues by Fleet Foxes, if you're familiar with that
Hey,
record.
great.
Yeah. Like that idea of like being like a functioning cog in some great machinery serving
Hmm.
something beyond me. Yeah, he sang that last night, so I've got it very top
Oh,
of
that's
mind
cool.
right now. Oh my God, it was
Yeah.
so good. Yeah. But yeah, like it just, yeah, thinking of that idea of being part of something bigger, being part of a larger community, and being part of collective healing as well. Like,
You said
yeah,
it. That's it. I mean, I think that's what I hope the chapter leaves people with, that true heroism is in that restoration and in the power of, like, yeah, like you said, collective healing. That's the whole process.
yeah. I feel like, particularly on the first three songs of this EP, there's a lot of letting go as well. I kind of in my own notes, because as I often say, like I kind of like just for the sake of organizing thoughts, I kind of put down my own interpretation and then like leave it with the artist that I'm talking to then be like, here's what it's actually about, or
Hmm.
expand on it or do whatever kind of vibes. But I almost said like Crooked the Road is almost like learning to let go of loving your pain. Also because I did my research and I read that, so I
Oh,
know that. Yeah,
oh.
I check. And then I said that, oh, I mean, like, I'm forgetting my words. Guilt a Killer is about, well, letting go of guilt and not holding on to it so tightly. And then They're Not There. I put it under letting go, but it's more of like learning to sort of gradually disconnect from like nightmares or trauma, or just being able to be like, this is not real, or this is no longer a part, like an active part of my life, this thing that
Hmm.
is scaring me. So that's why I kind of saw through my own lens as like this kind of first two-thirds of the EP is a lot of releasing things.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think that's well said. And I wanted to start with Crook of the Road because, for me, the mountain. that mountain to climb really began there. I mean, Monrovia wouldn't have been born without Crooked the Road, technically. So it's interesting to have that song be in the last act for me because that's the story. That's the start of where I had to leave this place in right up where I live. So I live right below this mountain called Lookout Mountain. Um, and it was up there where I was really battling a lot of these themes of loneliness and identity and homeland and adoption and the black experience and all these things. And it all comes to a light to me on this mountain, and and as these vices were kind of taking me to different places, it was there that my father had called me to come home to be and live home for some time, and this was in California, is where they lived at this time, and the last thing I wanted to do was go home. I did not want to be under any kind of parental ruling at the time, and it was really something special for me to accept this offer, this extended hand that I wouldn't normally have taken. Um, I don't know what caused me to do it. I think the the low levels of the well, truly. Um, yeah, I think that's what forced my hand. There was just nothing left in it, no nutrients, nothing in myself at this point, and ended up taking his hand and my father's hand and going back to California and really, rebuilding myself. And I wasn't even Mon at this point. I was far away from that. I went back to California and started yeah, building this house with my dad and really at the same time building myself. And that was such a thing I didn't realize till now. Then I had no idea, but now I look back and I'm like, wow, what a parallel, as I'm tearing down these structures and, repainting and scraping off old paint and taking out nails you know, and I did that all day, every day, sometimes by myself when he was at, the church, sometimes when he was, when he'd be home, we'd work together, but it was a very lonely time, but I needed to be alone. I needed to be alone with myself because there, I face the truth and sometimes the world is very loud and it's hard to see the truth in it when you're every day distracted by things that can come into your experience and help you cover over and keep you from diving into the undertow, the things that linger in those depths that you're afraid to dive into, but they really push every course of your journey. And you might not even know it. It might be in your subconscious, but if you don't dive into that undertow, some people have it. Some people have anger in the undertow. They wonder, why do I keep making these choices out of this? It's because you haven't gone back to realize that it is your anger or it is your fear that really is driving every choice you make. But you don't know this because you're distracted by all these things and just continue going, going, going. Sitting in the silence and working on these different things for myself, I realized what lingered in my undertow, what pushed me to be alone, what pushed me to not accept or love myself.
Yeah.
And so Crook of the Road takes me back to that place where I at last accepted the helping hands of another to then move and to later on down the line become Monrovia. So it's a really beautiful song to me. And one of my yeah, truly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, I mean, hearing you say all this, because I went through something very, very similar a few years ago where I was living in London. I went to university there and I had moved there thinking, this is the place. I'm going to stay here forever. It's amazing. And my life is
Mm.
going to be so great here and
Yeah.
all this stuff. And then towards the end of it, I went through like a mental health crisis. And I remember like I had to hit like absolute mental rock bottom to finally break and be like, I don't think I want to be here anymore. And I called my parents and I was like, I think I'm going to come and live with you.
Mm.
And so I did exactly what you did. It was like I had to almost be like bulldozed down to nothing to like you said, examine like what coping mechanisms I had, what had, you know, brought me to kind of that point mentally. And I very quickly learned, the only way out is through. And
Yeah,
yeah,
my friend Eric always says that. He's always the only way out is through.
yeah.
It's like,
And it's brutal, but if you give yourself the opportunity to do it, you get to build back better. And you get to, again, hopefully become a fuller, happier version of yourself that's like faced, like you said, the things that have been hiding in the undertow. And when you do that, like, it doesn't mean that everything's magically fixed. Also, like you
absolutely.
said,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
no, healing and growth is forever. But
It is,
it,
man.
yeah, it would be nice if it wasn't
It
sometimes.
would, huh? Yeah, it really would.
A break would be great. That would be so nice, but that's not how life works. Another thing that, again, I mentioned the idea of like loving your pain being sort of an idea crooked the road, and it kind of made me think about, I think, two types of people in particular that end up doing that, and one of them is musicians, particularly people in like the folk and storytelling genres, because we've been taught to romanticize
Mhm.
pain and trauma, and like your value as an artist comes from the way that you turn your pain into art. And then I think people that have been victims of some kind of serious trauma who then become very outspoken about it, which is such an incredible and powerful thing. But I almost wonder if sometimes in those two scenarios, it can almost feel like your value as a person becomes tied to the way that pain is shared. And like nobody deserves to feel that way.
Wow. This is very good. I have not been asked this question. This is nice. No, this is beautiful. Wow. And it's something that's wow, really, really, yeah, hard to battle. I mean, and it brings me back. I'm sure you've listened to, the new Bon Iver record of things behind things, and whatever that whole tape.
Mm,
Um, and that question just brought that up because I was reading more into this little project that he did, and a lot of it is him wrestling with that exact thought. Something that I've always thought about too, but having someone that I look up to really, really think about that was interesting because he says it was hard because people kept wanting him to write all these sad songs when it became what he was like. And even though he sometimes wasn't even in that state, but he would write these things and just to play the part of Bon Iver, of that whole thing. And that's a great question for me going forward, and something that I think about in the late night of myself is how much of this um will become just what I am at the end of it all is am I supposed to, do I keep continuing writing, telling my stories and writing these songs that are just sometimes really, really sad and like and will that become all that people remember me for, like these heavy, heavy topics and I don't know. I do that's a really good question, man. And I don't know what will become of it, to be honest. It's really I don't want it to be me romanticizing any of it, to be honest, but I can see it's so easy to do that and have the character become you become the character,
yeah.
I don't, how do I separate, I think some of the joys that I do have from Mon in some sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but I don't have
Yeah.
an answer for that. I really don't. I'm wrestling with it currently. Like I'm just kind of like, damn.
Yeah. Well, maybe for the next couple records you can nick some of Bon Iver's ideas and talk about that creatively and get super meta with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a tricky one. I mean, having, been in the music world for a long time now, it's definitely something I see a lot of my friends wrestle with, but also that like, it made me think back to like when I was a kid and like we'd go to like the Holocaust Museum and they'd have these like people who were survivors come and talk to us. And I think that the work that they're doing is, so incredible and so crucial, but at the same time, like, this person's being asked to like relive trauma from decades prior again and again and again. And I think the way that I almost see it as is like, it's beautiful work and it's something to be honored, but you also have the right to do it at the pace or at the quantity that feels okay to you.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, because it's interesting because people ask me all the time, do you enjoy performing these songs and different things and all this stuff? And it's a lot of the time not really. I'm sitting there thinking each of these songs bring me back to a very, direct and colorful time of where I know what these songs mean, the feelings that I had when I wrote them.
Yeah.
Um, and you go to play, say it's 25 shows in a row, and you're singing the same songs. I think the thing for me that I feared the most was that they wouldn't mean anything at all at some point. Um, some of those really formative pieces, like just becoming nothing. And and I lose that magic to it because at the end of the day, it's just me playing these songs for people instead of the songs living every time I'm playing them. They become dead songs. So
Yeah.
that's something that I think about a lot on tour every time is is these aren't great places to go back into. Like you said, these it's not always amazing telling everybody about, you know, my feelings of crooked or my guilt to killer or trials or Cleopatra about depression or it's really tough things that I had that I face still sometimes, and it's I think for me it's super important to keep realizing that those are real things and they're not just this isn't just some show, you know.
Yeah.
And that's yeah, that I think that's what I battle a lot is that. 'Cause I wouldn't say I'm a very showy artist, as in performative wise. Like I try to be as real as possible on stage with my emotions. Um, but if it becomes if it becomes a career, you know, I wonder what happens then to all of it.
Yeah. Like,
Because right now
it's
it's so new, so it's like every song is so powerful to me. It's so real to me because it's not far away from where I was. But
yeah. Well, I will say, like, I think the fact that you are so earnest, both with the way that you talk about your writing and the writing in of itself, I think it's going to be hard for these songs to become dead because, like I said, I know for me as a music fan, as a music journalist, if you will, as whatever, what I'm always drawn to is something that feels real and human, and that effect never dies. Like, even,
yeah,
I was talking about going to see Fleet Foxes yesterday, who are like my favorite band, and
yeah,
like some of those songs are over a decade old,
crazy.
and I still feel it. I was like jumping up and down like a little girl, and it reminded me of the way those songs have healed me, even, like years and years ago. And so, and I think because it's so clear that it comes from an earnest place, that effect never goes away. And
Hmm.
so, easier said than done, but I don't think you need to worry about that too much, in the sense that, like, your music so clearly comes from a real human being. And that, again, that's something that doesn't lose its shine. That's forever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it is. I suppose could be forever. Yeah. And another interesting point too, and you didn't even ask this question, but it's a thought.
They're welcome
But,
here.
I look at these things and as it's continued to grow, you know, people will message me like long paragraphs of how the music's done, incredible things for them and how, yeah, like I think another thing I truly wrestle with being an artist I guess in some kind of like healing or, music like this is I think people start to believe that perhaps you have like all these answers and things like that, and that you have a lot of things together, you know? Um, and that is a very hard part of this industry, I think, and
Mm,
particularly my style of music when it's dealing with like a lot of um, kind of transmutation and transfiguration type things. It's like people start believing that, the music is something, when it's them doing all of the work. Music's really just a friend, that comes alongside and can help guide them through different things. But can't tell you how much it worries me so much sometimes when I hear people talk about, like I'm saving them and things like that. And that's very heavy to me, you know.
yeah.
Um, and I've been trying to, you know, understand that more and what's the best ways to show people that they themselves are the ones doing a lot of those things. But
Yeah. I kind of try and think of it as, like it's not our individual responsibility to save everyone, and I know that's an easier said than done thing, but I almost see it as like it's a bonus. And so when I see it that way, it kind of takes the weight off the shoulders a little bit, and it's like, like your only responsibility is to be yourself and to heal yourself and to be good to other people, you know, and then everything else is just like a really beautiful extra. And
yeah,
so I know, at least for me, when I see it that way, that really helps me because it takes the weight off a little bit, but still allows me to still want to help where I have the energy to help, and never stop doing that or never become apathetic. It kind of helps me to strike my balance a little bit.
yeah, it's a good point.
Which I think is, speaking of apathy, I think going to winter wash is kind of a good time now, and I know we're kind of existing in a little bit of a heavy place for a little longer, but then we get to end with rust, which is, a beautiful kind of cooling breath and a warm hug at the end of this. So we will remember that that is right on the horizon as
Oh,
we go through this.
I could talk about this stuff all day. I like just deeper conversations and things. So I
Oh,
like your
same.
little mind's
Yeah.
work. You have a very great mind. I like it. I like the way it thinks. It's
Thank
very nice.
you.
Yeah, yeah. There's something to it, Sophia. Lovely.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I try. It's the joys of having a good therapist. That's kind of what I say. Therapists are the greatest.
Shout out that therapist for the one time.
I I don't know. Am I allowed to, or is that like a HIPAA violation? Can you say
Actually,
like
no, I was just saying like shout out, like
yeah?
dope. That's sick. That's cool.
Well, yeah. Well, I actually just recently had to switch therapists because my therapist changed practices and it's out of state, and that's a whole thing. But she absolutely saved my life through her work. So shout out to her. I won't say her name because again, I don't know that I'm allowed to, but
Shout
she's
out to her.
shout out to her. She's a wonderful human being that I am forever grateful for. But
Amazing.
yeah,
Oh, I love that.
the other thing I thought about, like, even though like winter wash is such an important reminder to not become apathetic to the things that are happening around the world, I think it's kind of important that it was part of this last act because I think there is an aspect of, to be able to help to heal others, you have to heal yourself first. And you have to kind of be able to stand on two strong feet in order to be able to serve others too. And so I thought it was interesting that this one happens to land on the record where, or on the act where, again, healing is forever, but so much healing has already happened.
Mm, right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And it's crazy with all the things going on in the world that song um I think came out at the right time as well because of that, you know. And the hero has to has to be aware. I mean, that's one of the most crucial things. How can you help people if you're not aware of other people's circumstances? If you're not, if you can't be too too focused on your own at the same time though. Like you do have to be grounded, but you can also still help people. I do believe this, you know, if you aren't the fully, if you're not the fully made project yet, if you're, you're still learning and growing, I still think awareness is such a strong, strong thing in this world. And Winter Watch 24 was interesting because, the song talks about the different things and the themes of the verses. So like the first verse, talks about being afraid to even open the door. You're stuck in this place. You're afraid of what's out there. You want to live in your Kansas, is what I call it. I love Wizard of Oz. And, you see Dorothy be in this place of black and white where there's no color, but she doesn't know the difference. This is where
Yeah.
she's lived. This is normal to her. We see the I'm spinning. She's taken from there to a place of color at last. All new experiences. She meets the Lion, the Tin Man, all these different types of people. They become friends. They go on this journey together to see this wizard. And it's crazy. Like that's like a lot of this life. Like you wouldn't even know the people you would meet, the different people out there, if you don't and leave that place that's centered around you, that black and white, the normality, the comfortableness of your space. And the second verse then says, talks about people in America. I get it. You're We have things here to deal with as well. Like there's people in America that can't even provide for their family. America is one of the greatest countries in the world, as in just livability. And we still have things that people are struggling through. So how then can they focus on other people either? I understand that. And the second verse sympathizes with those people as well. Dance around my hurt, too many worries of my own to think of yours, right? I hear them crying, I still defer. And I'd say, this is still dissonance. You can still do something. The littlest thing is you can still do, even in a place of not being sure, even on grounds that are wobbly for yourself, you can still help pave, atomize a road for someone else in that state. And it's tough. It's super tough. And so I try to take the listener then to two different places, in the story of the song. The third verse goes to Monova, this place in the Congo, where there's a lot of terror. There's, the girls are, getting assaulted all the time, and kids are working in mines. And so I tell the story of a girl that experiences this night where something happened to her in the night, and then she still has to go to work the next day after something like that. And it was super heavy to write that and put that in song. Because of the melody. And that's the thing about the music too, is like a lot of the time I wonder if people understand hear what the words are that I'm saying to in this song. Like I see people making their own little, their reels to it, telling they're radicalized you because we kind of made this thing where it was like who radicalized you, whatever.
Yep.
And I'm always like, I hope you're understanding like that there's just these stories that are in this song. Like it's not just some kind of like trend thing. Like I'm really wanting you to understand that there are so many people that don't have your luxury, your freedom, dude, to just be able to live your life the way you would like it to be. And so from there, you go to Gaza, talk about a little boy who doesn't have even the luxury to play outside anymore. And that's a simple thing. That's why I loved that part. It was like, it wasn't something crazy. It was just, the kid just wanted to play outside,
Yeah.
but he's in a place where he can't even do that. Um, but yeah, anyway, I don't even know where I was going with this. I was just kind of splitting up the song for you.
No, it's good. I remember when the war in Ukraine started, I had this random thought of just like imagining like someone's like ballet studio or coffee shop being blown up, like the places that are comforting and familiar. And as much as that might seem insignificant compared to, the loss of human life, like those little things ground us. And for us here, it's like for me to be able to walk to my local coffee shop and be able to talk to like the same barista, like it makes me feel very much like I am a part of the place that I'm in and
Yeah.
that I'm part of a community. And so just to imagine, like you said, it's sometimes the smallest things that can speak the loudest or carry a shocking amount of weight to them. And
Agreed.
and it's an important reminder to people.
Yeah. And in a wrestle, it's, and things become fake to you with this, with the phones and TikTok and
Yeah.
Instagram. You're scrolling, you see bombs, then you see dances, then you see kittens, then you see bombs, then you see like it's like that cognitive dissonance is crazy.
Yeah.
You'd set the separation that you can't even really understand, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's a wild time to be alive, to be honest, man. I don't
Yeah.
know.
But then at the same time, like having a song like Guilt to Killer on the same record, I think I almost see it as like reminding a good reminder to us that the two poles are kind of dangerous because both guilt and apathy can be paralyzing. And,
Hmm.
it's like I don't know if like compassion's the middle ground or what it is, but like if we just think about like, oh, I feel bad that I live here and that it's like, okay, so you're just going to wallow in that and you're not going to do anything about it. Or on the other
Exactly.
hand, you're like, well, there's too much going on. I just can't process it. So
Yep.
you're just going to shut it all out. And it's like,
Yeah.
where's the middle, you know?
Yeah, that is beautiful. Yeah, that's well said.
Hmm.
Yeah, where is the middle? It has to be compassion, I suppose.
Yeah.
And maybe empathy is the easy way out, but an understanding of, maybe you don't have to feel what they've exactly felt, but I don't know. You got to, and oh yeah, and I guess that's why that song, that line at the end of Winter Wash, where it's like I wash my hands, I believe we can achieve good things if you see you and me. So that importance of seeing another human and seeing their struggle, being like that could have been like I didn't shoot. You don't know. No one has a choice in their where they're born or what they're born into. So like you can't. It's so crazy that people just will go and hate someone or judge something from someone else's world when you think like they were just born there and they live in that experience now. You were born in America. How lovely. Someone else was born. I was born in Liberia, West Africa, born into the middle of a civil war, kids killing each other, wiping out whole villages, burning down churches with people inside of it, like lawlessness. And yeah, I lost my parents in the war, you know, and I didn't have a choice in that. But what you do have a choice is, what you have a choice in is everything else that follows, everything else that comes after. And so that is the most difficult part is realizing that, yeah, you really can't just sit there and be like, all these things happen to me, so this is it. Like the hard part is realizing, oh, I can choose to do something about it
Hmm.
and not have this be my story, to have resentment and anger and hate for things that have happened to me in the past, or to hate a certain race because of their color or their beliefs and different things like that. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think that it's kind of just ridiculous to me that that humanity does this to each other without people don't have choices to be where they are. Not until clearly they're older, they can leave. I mean, not even then, sometimes can they leave certain places. So it's just crazy. I'm like, bro, just like you have to love people, man. You gotta, yeah, you gotta just pour out that love, man. And these divisions, this river that is trying to divide everybody is so deceptive, man. Because I do think that the more love you pour into this place, that river slowly recedes. And that's really the answer. But we're just taught like It hurts to love people, and you could get hurt if you love someone or love this too much. Um, so yeah, people keep it to themselves or never really give to the full extent that they could. And that's a loss, man. It's a loss
Yeah.
to not only them, but to perhaps to someone near them as well.
Yeah. I like that you, whether you did it intentionally or not, basically just said a line from Rust, which is I'm loving you too much.
Oh, I didn't even mean to. I was just
You,
flow
which
state.
no, it's good because this is a really great. I love a clean segue, and we just had one, so let's go.
Maybe you incepted it into my mind when you
There
brought
you
up rap
go.
earlier.
It was just like it's like those like magician or illusion or not illusions, like those mind reader dudes that they do
You
like
did it.
subconscious stuff. That's what I did.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
that when you say it that way, it almost makes that line make more sense. It's almost like you're saying I'm loving you too much, but it's like, yeah, I am, and I'm gonna stand in that.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. You freaking won. But yeah, that's the whole point of the song. It's like, dude, I, and this is a quote I always say, and it's a line I always say about just when I'm talking about Russ, but yeah, like the love that you pour out is never wasted, never in vain. I mean, the hope of everything in that song Rust is hopefully you pour enough love out, and it's not even about you carrying out maybe that mission for you in your life that is like what you poured your love into. It's hopefully where someone else comes along can pick up that love too, and continue to spread it and share it as it continues. Um, and that song's really really important to the end of that act because you go through all these different things: crooked the road, guilt, to they're not there, to winter wash. Um, and the thing is, no matter all these different things, these different fears and losses and successes or whatever, I think the greatest thing in our task as just humans and living in this life is that we just are supposed to like love this experience till time and like to find the joys of living that make it just incredible. The friends that you have are so important. The people that you make that connection that you just don't even know why you have that connection. Super important and makes this experience even beautiful. And that's the point of the song. It's not about this story of a love of two people. That is just the imagery that I use for this song. It's mainly about a love of life and the trials, the morning, waking up, you come into this world, everything's new, set up for it. You're like, wow, this is crazy. You get to the afternoon of your life, going through Burnt Mill Road, wringing your rags, going through failure, seeing the different things and struggling through that afternoon of your life. And then hopefully making it through that, coming home to and realizing that it was all worth all these pains and different things are all worth it in the end. Um, and you find your footing. And that's why that line ends. I finally found my footing, making it through these different things, and I can continue to love again. So the song really is just about loving the world, loving the experience. But yeah, put through, you know, uh, the imagery of two people loving each other through different things. But
Mhm.
yeah, man, Rest is that's a cool song because I came out of note. The funny thing is, I wrote that song. I had a note. I wrote those lines in Rome last year when we were playing for the UN. It was just, and I have it still. I took a screenshot because I was looking for it. I was like, and it was from afternoon till dusk. I'm loving you till I rust. Um, till this, oh, loving you till disgust. No, it was yeah, from afternoon till dusk. Loving you till I rust. Loving you till disgust. Something like that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even what it was now. It was a little bit more sad, to be
Mm.
honest, because I added the word disgust instead in there because it was almost like I'll love you through all these different things, like even if it's like we just like hate each other. Um, but in the studio, my good friend Cooper, who does a lot of our production, was just playing a melody, and that poem came back to me, and we changed it to um, "Till
Just
desire turns
it
to
turns to
dust."
dust. Yeah. You
Yeah,
made us sing
and
it enough times at the Troubadour that it's like permanently tattooed in my brain.
I forgot. Yeah, you know the lines well. Um,
Yeah.
so, and that's another piece that I love about music and just writing in general. Why I tell people just to write things. things, man. People, they'll ask me, artists sometimes online, what's your writing process and different things. And for me, it's just capturing life in its essence and writing everything like I see and hear, perhaps something from this conversation today, like remembering it all and taking it in and writing it, even if it doesn't mean much then. Time has a funny way of bringing things that are important back. And that song, I didn't think that was going to be a song. That was just a thought. Um, yeah, and it's crazy to see a year later it become a song that's like one of our favorites. And yeah, so pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love music like that, man. Sometimes it just finds you. I think it's important not to search, man, too much for words and things. It always reveals itself in time.
Part 4, Atonement, is available now wherever you normally get your music. This podcast is hosted, edited, and produced by myself, Sophia Lopercaro, and the artwork is by Meg Wilford.